This is a Sonic channel, right? You're all Sonic fans, right? Well, how about I talk about games that are not Sonic games, but are instead games you guys might enjoy due to their similarities to the Sonic franchise. I'm Lord Danny, and I'm here to recommend you 4 game franchises which are similar to Sonic the Hedgehog. So, before I get into this list, I just want you to know that the games I mention will be games I've personally experienced. So if I miss a game out, it's because I haven't experienced it myself. Some of these games may seem different to the Sonic franchise, but these are games that I have enjoyed while being a Sonic fan, and I have noticed some similarities between them all. So again, this isn't supposed to be a list of the 4 games in the entire world which are most like Sonic, but instead it's supposed to be a list of 4 recommendations for games I think you guys watching this would personally enjoy. So anyway, on with the list. Number 4. Ratchet and Clank.
Captain Quark is gonna be sorry he messed with me.
If you guys have played Shadow the Hedgehog and enjoyed it for the most part, then you'd probably like Ratchet and Clank. Even if you didn't like Shadow the Hedgehog, Ratchet & Clank is still a game which I believe Sonic fans would enjoy. The game is a third-person platform shooter. Like the Sonic games, the cast is weird and wonderful, and the characters are designed to fit into their universe. I personally feel that the original Ratchet & Clank games were more alike to the Sonic games due to them being believably futuristic with this junkyard feel to it, while the modern games feel a little too futuristic and distant. There are some activities you get to do in the original games, such as rail grinding, which definitely resemble the Sonic Adventure games, and these segments can be really enjoyable. I also see Ratchet's personality being somewhat like Sonic's, except not as cheesy, with him being this young guy who saves the galaxy from danger, although he didn't want to be in such a position at first. He's sort of like a combination of Sonic and Shadow. The games also feature various enemies, with the most famous one being Dr. Nefarious. If we're gonna use Sonic words here, Dr. Nefarious was essentially roboticized, and now he's a bitter and twisted robotic scientist. Although he's also quite comedic. He is pretty much like Dr. Eggman crossed with the original Dr. Robotnik from Sonic Sat.AM. And he treats his robotic servant, Lawrence, much like how Robotnik would treat Snively or Scratch or Orbot. Robots are also a prominent feature of the game, with more robots appearing in the original series. And again, I find that to be similar to the Sonic series since the main enemies are Eggman's robots. Overall, I think a lot of Sonic fans would love the Ratchet & Clank games, but it depends on why you like Sonic. If you like Sonic for the fast platforming gameplay and colourful environments, then Ratchet & Clank might not be for you since it's not exactly as bright and whimsical, and it focuses a lot on combat. Still, I think you guys should check it out.
Meet the Omni Wrench.
Number 3. Rayman. Alright, so this also may seem like a strange one, but Rayman was a game I grew up with, and honestly I could see how it's similar to Sonic. The first game was a 2D platformer, much like the original Sonic games, and the player would guide Rayman through the levels using different abilities and the odd power-up, while collecting various collectibles. But the most satisfying thing to collect were the cages. By breaking them open, you would free the creatures trapped inside. Again, very much like Sonic when he frees the animals Eggman has captured. The second game is probably the most famous and most loved, since it was released a few years after the first and introduced Rayman into a 3D environment which, unlike with Sonic, worked first try, since Sonic's first introductions to 3D were overall seen as a failure. The game focused heavily on Rayman working to free his people from the space pirates who were destroying his world. Again, in each level you could rescue your friends, the Teensies, and collect different items. I couldn't help but think the whole fighting for your planet plot was similar to Sonic CD or Sonic Forces, or maybe even the old Sonic cartoons like Sonic Sat AM or Sonic Underground. This same story was revisited in Rayman Revolution, which was a game I grew up playing. It's basically Rayman 2 but with improved graphics, voice acting, exclusive bosses, and an open world map instead of a small level select hub. The reason I recommend these games is because some of the gameplay elements are similar to what you would find in a Sonic game, which I just mentioned. Not only that, but the characters are so bizarre looking and colourful, and I just can't help but think they have the same wonderful weirdness of the Sonic characters. The environments are also similar to what you would find in a Sonic game, so I would recommend it to people looking for a game which played like Sonic, and to people looking for a game with a similar design and cast of characters.
Rayman?
Number 2. Crash Bandicoot.
Uh-oh!
Here's one of the classic games of my childhood, which may seem very outdated, but there's no shame in picking up a copy of one of the first Crash Bandicoot games or the recent PS4 remaster. I recommend the older Crash games up until Crash Tag Team Racing because some of the games which came after that were a little different. But overall, that's just my personal opinion, and you're free to play whichever ones you want. The reason I chose the Crash franchise is simple: anthropomorphic animals. You have Crash, a failed mutant animal experiment, battling against Dr. Cortex and his creations, much like how Sonic battles against Dr. Eggman, along with the lore which suggests Eggman played a part in making Sonic who he is today. It's also worth mentioning that the creators of the game called the original draft Sonic's ass, since they designed the controls similar to a Sonic game except going forwards and backwards, meaning the player would get a good view of the booty. The areas you get to explore are very similar to what you would find in a Sonic game, especially in the original Crash trilogy. Like with Sonic, Crash visits natural locations before heading into levels resembling Cortex's territory. Crash Twinsanity also includes a plot involving Crash and Cortex working together, and we've seen that a few times with Sonic and Eggman. Not only that, but the overall design of the characters is nice and similar to Sonic. If you're in the Sonic fandom because you have fun designing Sonic-styled animals, then maybe this game is for you. You could create Crash-styled animals. And, like I said before, the gameplay itself is similar to Sonic, and you also get a few familiar power-ups, such as invincibility. I highly recommend this game, and I'm glad it was remastered recently so that younger gamers don't use the graphics are too bad excuse.
Well, the past few years have kind of been slow. Wrath of Cortex didn't do as well as we'd hoped, and... Fish?
And finally, number 1. Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. I'm not gonna lie, this was the franchise which actually got me into Sonic. And the saddest part is that this series is nowhere near as famous. Back when the first game was released, the trailer actually showed Ty in a hospital where he had beaten Sonic, Crash and Spyro, symbolizing that he was going to be the hip new hero. But that wasn't to last. You can pick up a copy of the first Ty game for under £5 in the UK, and no doubt the price is similar in the US and other countries. Same goes for the second game. The third game wasn't even released in Europe, which is why it's a bit more pricey. It's just really sad to see that the franchise had so much hope and potential, but it just wasn't famous enough to carry on, and now the company who created it, Chrome Studios, don't even have the money to make a new Ty game. But they're still trying, and that determination is what I love to see. So, what is the franchise like? Well, as you can see, there are more anthropomorphic animals. The series is set in Australia, and started off with Ty battling the evil Boss Cass to rescue the missing Tasmanian tigers. Boss Cass is a cassowary, a type of large bird, but he does not associate himself with warm-blooded animals as he, as a bird, is a descendant of dinosaurs, cold-blooded lizards, and he wishes to take the world back from the Warmbloods using the power of the 5 mystic talismans. And throughout the series he finds other ways to try getting what he wants. Unlike most bad guys, he does have a city which he permanently has power over, this city being called Cassopolis, which is interesting since in most games the bad guy's city is usually destroyed to make way for a new and peaceful place. It sort of reminds me of Robotropolis from the original Sonic cartoons. The reason I got into the Sonic franchise was because I read somewhere that Ty and Sly, two characters from the game, were like Sonic and Shadow, and this was the final push for me to actually try a Sonic game, since for years I had actively been avoiding the games while watching the old cartoons. Ever since then, I have been a huge Sonic fan. Other characters also share similarities with Sonic characters. You have Ty, who is like Sonic, and Sly, who is like Shadow, but I'll also compare Sly to Manic from Sonic Underground, since he is the cool brother who was raised separately with a tougher upbringing. I could also compare Betty, Ty's sister, to Sonia, but other than being related to the main character, I don't see any other similarities between them. Sai can easily be compared to Metal Sonic, and was no doubt inspired by him, since he was designed to be Ty's robotic rival. Fluffy is a character I'd say was something like Rouge in the way she acted, kinda like if Rouge was a permanent bad guy. There is a Bat character called Shadow, but she's too edgy to be compared to Rouge, but her daughter, Shade, can also be compared to Rouge. The Queen King, the villain of the third game, can be compared to Mephiles, since he is a being who takes on the forms of others already existing, and says the edgiest lines you'll ever hear. Although his edginess could also be compared to Infinite, or maybe he could even be compared to Black Doom. Shazza the Dingo, Ty's love interest throughout the series, reminds me of Amy from Sonic Boom, since she puts up more of a fight and likes to get work done instead of being like regular Amy who just fangirls over Sonic. As for Boss Cass, it really is hard to compare him to any Sonic character. The obvious character to compare him to would be Eggman, but I'm gonna be honest and say that Boss Cass is one of the more unique villains, and I've never encountered anyone like him, and that's something I hope you guys would like. I may as well mention now that the third game is very much like what Sonic Forces should have been for the Sonic franchise. Ty 3 takes a dark turn and has some alternate dimension plot lines, and the plot focuses on Ty fighting to save his world after it is almost taken over by a mysterious new threat. If you liked the potential idea behind Sonic Forces, then you might want to try looking for the third Ty game. But it will only have an impact on you after you play at least the second game. As for gameplay, there are a few similarities, but not too many. There are segments involving grinding in the second and third games, though most of the time Ty is just running, gliding, biting, climbing and throwing boomerangs. I suppose I could compare his gliding to the gameplay segments of Knuckles and Rouge in games like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic 06. As for the biting and boomerang tossing, that's again something quite unique. Although some of the boomerangs do remind me of gadgets and power-ups from games like Sonic Forces, Knuckles' Chaotix, and Sonic Boom. Overall, I would say that the gameplay isn't too similar to a Sonic game, but at the same time it wouldn't be hard for a Sonic player to learn the controls. I highly recommend this game to Sonic fans, and like I said, it's very cheap to buy second hand, and now the whole trilogy is available on Steam, so if you find yourself looking for a new game to play, then I definitely suggest the Tasmanian Tiger franchise.
Sly! What are you doing?
What I should have done years ago. I'm giving him a hand, mate.
So, there you have it. 4 different video game franchises which I personally recommend to Sonic fans. I know that there are other video game franchises such as Gex Gecko, Bubsy, Klonoa, Lucky's Tale and so on. But I wanted to include games that I absolutely adore. And I especially wanted to include games I grew up playing. So if you guys have played any of those games, or any other games you think Sonic fans should play, then go ahead and leave a comment explaining which franchise you think Sonic fans would love. I'd be interested to see some other underrated games too, since Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is a game I know many fans haven't heard of, but it's a game I also knew would be great to recommend to Sonic fans. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Danny, signing out.